Welcome to part 4 of this presentation. Thank you for joining us. The AAA framework. AAA stands for Authentication, Authorization, and Accounting. This is a fundamental concept in cybersecurity and network management. It is crucial for ensuring secure access control, resource management, and activity tracking within IT systems. Here's why each component of the AAA framework is important. Authentication is the process of verifying the identity of a user, device, or system. It ensures that the entity attempting to access a system is who or what it claims to be. Pardon me. It is important because authentication is the first line of defense against unauthorized access. It prevents malicious actors from gaining access to sensitive systems and data. It ensures that only legitimate users can access resources. Thereby protecting against identity theft and impersonation. Many regulatory frameworks like GDPR, HIPAA, and PCI-DSS, I'm using these three for examples, there are many others, require robust authentication and mechanisms to protect sensitive information. Simple examples are putting in password requirements, PINs. These are traditional methods of authentication. You can use biometric authentication, fingerprints, facial recognition, and retina scans. Retina scans is, measuring the distance between your two eyeballs, if you will. Using MFA, multi-factor authentication, which combines two or more authentication factors, for example, something you know, something you have, or something you are. Authorization. Authorization is the process of determining what an authenticated user or system is allowed to do. It involves granting or denying permissions to access resources or perform actions based on defined policies. It is important because you want to ensure that users have access only to the resources they need to perform their tasks, not more. This principle of least privilege minimizes the potential damage from accidental or intentional misuse. You want to protect sensitive data and systems by enforcing policies that restrict access based on roles, groups, or individual user identities. You also want to make sure you have operational efficiency so that you can streamline operations by automating access control based on rules and policies, reducing the need for manual intervention. The least manual intervention, the better. Some examples are using RBAC, stands for Role-Based Access Control. We talked about this many times before. This is for giving access permissions based on user roles within an organization. There's ABAC, stands for Attribute-Based Access Control. These are access decisions based on attributes, for example, user attributes, resource attributes, or environmental conditions. Or you can use ACLs, Access Control Lists, which are lists of permissions attached to objects specifying which users or system processes can access the object and what operations they can perform. The third A stands for accounting. Accounting, also known as auditing or logging, involves tracking and recording the actions performed by users and systems. It provides a detailed log of access and activity. It is important because we need audit trails. Audit trails maintain a record of user activities and system events, which is essential for auditing and forensic investigations. It is important for compliance. Many regulations require detailed logs of user activities to ensure accountability and traceability. So monitoring and analysis are very important. They help to detect and analyze unusual or suspicious activities, enabling timely response to security incidents. We also want to make sure we're doing resource management properly, which provide data for analyzing resource usage and performance, helping in capacity planning and resource optimization. Some examples are having system logs of system events, access attempts, and operations. User activity reports detailing records of user actions such as login times, accessed resources, and executed commands. We want to track the data flow by monitoring networks and any network activities for performance and security analysis. So let's revisit some of the top-level strategies for automation and defense in depth. So far, we've talked about both of these topics quite a bit. So what is our top-level strategy? In summary, we want to integrate security into every phase of the DevOps lifecycle, transforming it from DevOps to DevSecOps, short for Development Security Operations. We want to automate security checks to enforce coding standards and compliance policies. Utilize continuous integration and continuous deployment CI/CD pipelines to ensure ongoing security and compliance. We want to implement defense in depth by layering security controls throughout the system. The key principles include so-called shift-left security. You might have heard of this term quite a bit. This merely means to incorporate security measures early in the development process. Absolutely, we want continuous monitoring to regularly monitor systems and applications for vulnerabilities and compliance on an ongoing basis. Automation is key. Use automated tools for static code analysis, dynamic code analysis, dynamic testing, and policy enforcement to reduce human error and increase efficiency. We need a very clearly defined, policy-driven security policy and have a way to automate all these policies and then carry out the enforcement. We'll talk a bit about that later. We want to implement defense in depth. Multiple layers of security controls need to be in place to protect against different types of threats. The goal of automation are fourfold. We want to ensure consistent and reliable enforcement of security policies. We want to detect and mitigate security vulnerabilities early in the development process, improve overall security posture by reducing manual intervention and human error. And lastly, to maintain compliance with industry standards and regulations. So this is sort of a summary of what we had talked about as a strategy. Here are a few important, what I would call housekeeping items to run through. First is audit control and management. What does it exactly mean or entail? Every software development effort must be able to provide evidence of compliance. For each software deployed into any managed environment within an organization, you need evidence. So I'll let you look at what the evidence include in the previous slide. I jumped on to the next slide, so let's take a look at this. The previous slide's items are pretty self-explanatory. Here, the exceptions process. Should we allow for exceptions? Well, for any kind of rules, there are always exceptions. But any exception to the standards in this policy must be requested in writing with the following information. Business or technical rationale. risk impact analysis, risk mitigation analysis. Plan to come into compliance. When now you are not complying, when will you be complying? When will you be in compliance? What is your plan to get there? What is the date for when the plan is being executed successfully? When can we expect that to happen? All these need to be written down and get approvals. From whom? The entities to approve these exceptions should be by your CIO, Chief Information Officer, or the Office of the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, or the appointed delegates of officer level. It's so important because the impact of not adhering to the standards could be significant. Negative impact could be significant. The exceptions you filed will remain on file, will be stored away with the Office of the Chief Information Security Officer, and they will administer and govern compliance to make sure that you adhere to your plan. The date you said that there will be in adherence is met. So lastly, who should have this policy and guidelines? This policy and guidelines needs to be distributed to all IT staff within the organization annually. Now, some organizations would have frequent updates and they would be distributed again several times a year, at least maybe twice a year or 3 times a year. But at least, this is the minimum, is every single year. You need a new updated policy and guidelines for security. All IT staff will need to certify acceptance and awareness of this policy annually so that you know that they really have read it and be aware of it. Not just, oh, I sent it to you. I haven't even opened the email to look at it. But you need to make sure that you certify acceptance. The policy will be automatically reviewed annually, no later than 365 days from the last revision date. Now, some of these requirements we didn't pull it out of a hat. These are compliance on average required by a lot of regulations. Furthermore, it will be reviewed in response to regulatory or compliance changes and on demand as determined by the Office of the CISO. So as your business units or business lines or product that you put out evolves or changes or being added onto, you want to make sure that your security policies and guidelines are pairing with what you're required to do. So that's the policy change control you need to frequently update to make sure that they are up to date. Wrap up. This basic but comprehensive security policy document for any organization that does software development ensures that all aspects of secure development practices are covered, including coding standards, risk assessment, automated detection, encryption policies, and the AAA framework. I want to thank you for going through these 4 segments of the presentation, part 1 to part 4. If you have any comments about this presentation, I'd love to hear about them. Please put it on the comments section below the YouTube video. And thank you very much for watching.